Go ahead and get started. Um, Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar Accessibility in 2025 from Compliance to Competitive Advantage. My name is Raisa. I am on the marketing team here at Recite Me, and I'll be running today's session. I am a Black female, about 5'5", with brown braids, and I'm wearing a pink top today. We have an exciting agenda lined up for you guys to explore how digital accessibility is evolving in 2025 and why it's more important than ever. And we have a great panelist. So what you will learn today is the importance of website accessibility, who needs support online, accessibility in the arts, overview of some key accessibility regulations. We'll have a case study from Daymark Recovery Services, practical steps for accessibility success, and how Recite Me can help your organization. So with that in mind, I'm going to have our amazing panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Dr. Sharon Weir at Center for the Disabled of New York. If you could please give us an introduction.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Sharon McLennan Weir, and I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Independence of the Disabled New York, Sydney. I am a totally blind person, so I live, breathe disability. I look like I'm a brown-skinned woman. I have blue eyes. I have blonde hair. I'm wearing a pink jacket with a black blouse, black pants. And I'm sitting in my home office with a backdrop of pink window shade. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon. Next, we'll hear from Kyle.
Good morning. My name is Kyle Thomas. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at Opera Omaha in Omaha, Nebraska. I am a white male with brown hair and a red beard and glasses, and I am sitting in a pretty normal blank white office right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Next, we'll hear from Emma.
Hello, I'm Emma Morris. I'm a white female with glasses, short brown hair. I am also in a very blank office room. Not very exciting here. I'm wearing a black and white top.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Next, we'll hear from Kelly.
Hi, my name is Kelly Jan, and I am with Recite Me as a Senior Business Development Executive. I am a white female with brown hair, wearing a headset, and I have on a green and cream flower blouse.
Thank you, Kelly. And last but not least, Avneet.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Avneet Jagpal. I work with Recite Me as an accessibility specialist. I'm an Indian female with long black hair, and I'm wearing a cream top today.
Thank you all. Okay, Kelly.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you for Raisa for giving us a heads up as to what we'll be going through today. What you see on your screen is the dictionary definition for accessibility. But what we want to focus on is, what does that mean from a digital perspective? What does that mean when it's being applied to websites and online content? And we want people to be able to perceive the content, meaning that it should be visible, audible, or otherwise available in a format that they can access. They should be able to understand the content, meaning that clear language is being used, that information is being presented logically, and that there are alternative formats when needed. They must also be able to navigate the content easily through keyboard shortcuts, screen reader friendly layouts, and intuitive menus. And lastly, that content should be able to be easily interacted with on the site, whether someone's filling out a form, watching a video, or being able to click a button. So why should you build an inclusive and accessible website? Firstly, it is the right thing to do. Everyone who is accessing your content and visiting your website should have the opportunity to be able to access that content in a way that best suits their needs. Secondly, it is a smart business practice. Providing an accessible website will increase your web traffic and also engagement on your site. And lastly, in many cases, it is required. There are laws and mandates that stipulate how websites should be designed and built. And organizations that we work with know that inclusivity is important, not only to their bottom line. At the heart of it, they want to do what's right for their members, their staff, their customers, and anyone that's part of the community visiting their websites. So let's talk a little bit about who needs support online. You see some statistics there that are on the screen, and I won't read each of those to you, but you may be surprised to see how many people there are in the U.S. who have a named or stated disability. And those individuals, you may think of right off the top of your head, maybe it's someone who has a physical disability. And we think about when we walk into a building, maybe there's a ramp or a special door or a bathroom or a parking space for those individuals. But sometimes we don't think about those who might have a barrier on a website or a barrier to digital content, meaning those that have a visual or a cognitive disability or even a communication barrier where content needs to be presented in a way where it makes it easier for those to apply for a job, attend school, apply for a license for your car, shop, open up accounts, gather information, do research. All of those things is very important that all of the individuals that I just mentioned, as well as those that may not speak English as their first language, have the ability to access that content online. Now, how do we do that? Well, here at Recite Me, we have two tools that we will talk about today. Firstly is our assistive toolbar. It's a great first step for organizations to be able to install the Recite Me accessibility toolbar that is embedded in your website that allows any site visitor to be able to alter the information in a way that best suits their needs in real time. It does help you improve your user experience. However, having an assistive toolbar, it's very important to note that it does not make you ADA compliant. My colleague Avneet is going to talk a little bit later about our checker tool, and I'll mention that as well, that will do things like making sure that the coding of your site is compliant. But the toolbar is a real-time way, almost like wearing a pair of glasses, that allows an individual to look through a lens that allows them to filter the website in a way that best suits their needs, whether that is changing the font, changing the contrast colors, using a ruler tool for focusing, using a magnifying glass, and several other things, as well as translating the website that can help the site visitor have their best user experience possible. The second tool, which I mentioned that my colleague Avneet is going to talk a little bit more about later, is our accessibility checker. What the checker does is checks your website against the WCAG, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, to ensure that your site is being remediated in an ongoing basis to make sure that those who do have their own assistive technology are able to navigate the site, and things like making sure that your site has the correct contrast, the correct fonts, that things like images have been tagged correctly, and so forth. And I do believe that we have a short video to show.
Communicating with our customers, and we know that we need to make them accessible. But where do we start on this journey? How do we make our websites accessible? And how do we make them compliant? Let's take this complex and daunting topic and make it simple. The Recite Me scanner is changing the way we address accessibility issues on our websites. Following 4 simple steps, we can make sure our websites are built with accessibility in mind to ensure everyone is offered a great user experience. So, how do we do it? Let's start off by scanning your domain. Use your sitemap to scan your most important web pages, including page templates. Auto-scanning will make sure you're kept up to date each month on how your website is performing. Time to identify and fix your issues. Our intuitive dashboard helps you identify the most common accessibility issues on your website to tackle first. Then use Recite Me intelligence and guidance to fix these issues quickly to boost your accessibility score. Track your accessibility journey in real time. Create custom reports to track your progress with your team, or look ahead and roadmap WCAG issues in your fix queue. Share your progress as you continue your accessibility journey. Using our handy scoring system for each rating, you know exactly where you are to become AA compliant. Together, you'll become accessibility heroes in no time.
So thank you, Kelly. Now that you've laid the groundwork of what inclusion is, why it's important, let's move on to our next speaker, Dr. Weir at Sydney, who's going to tell us about why accessibility is important to their organization and share some real-life examples of inaccessibility in daily life.
Thank you so much. So Sydney's mission, Sydney's been around since 1978. We are a grassroots disability rights program delivery as well as advocacy organization. Our mission and our goal is to remove systemic barriers for people with disabilities living in the community. If you remember anything that I say today, the most important thing is to remember that people with disabilities are just like you, me, and everyone else. We want to live, we want to love, we want to work, we want to enjoy recreational activities, we want to, if we have religious beliefs, we want to execute those beliefs, and we want to do shopping and everything else that makes life enjoyable. So we have to ensure that we live in a barrier-free society that's removed from ableistic views as well as physical barriers to access. Why is accessibility so important to Sydney? Essentially, everyone that we serve are people with disabilities, and we also have staff members that have disabilities themselves. So we live, breathe, and understand how accessibility is so important to one's life. We recognize that we live in a digital age where people are constantly have to keep up with technology. And based on people's disabilities, may it be sensory, learning, physical, cognitive, or psychological disabilities, people use technology differently. An individual like myself who's totally blind uses screen reading magnification. Some people with learning disabilities use regular magnification. We also have people that English is not their first primary language. We have people that have speech disorders. We have people that may need an adaptive keyboard because they had a stroke or they had some sort of neurological condition. So it's important to recognize that people are not going to use the computer, their smart device, or access videos the same way like everyone else. Programs. So we provide a lot of service delivery programs to ensure that people with disabilities can access a better quality of life. And we focus those programs on the 7 core areas of life that we see that we constantly have to advocate for in our advocacy and legislative initiatives. These 7 barriers of life include accessible housing, making sure that people have access to education, employment, mental health care, physical health care, because we recognize the mind and the body works together. We also have to ensure that people are able to use public transportation and also have the right to vote. These 7 core areas of life has many, many barriers for people with disabilities, and they also involve many aspects of technology. So we work hard to ensure that people have access to these aspects of life. We also have several program services that are listed on the slide, from our benefit programs to helping people obtain food assistance, helping people get health care through our CHAR and ICANN programs, helping people obtain work through our Access VR programs, helping people access mental health services. We do offer counseling, group counseling, and reassurance calls because we know that people with disabilities have high incidence of mental health, but also dealing with social isolation. We have over 37 federal, state, city, and foundation programs that serve New Yorkers with disabilities in the 5 boroughs of New York City. I would say to you that all these programs, from employment to legal, to just sustaining one's level of independence and one's level of feeling secure about who they are as an individual, are very important. And I will also say that having a disability is something that is not exclusive to just one member of society. As you know, there's over 61 million people in the United States that have a disability. And I would say to you that people are temporarily able-bodied. At any point of your life, you can have membership to this group. So wouldn't you like, once you become disabled, to have a society that's accessible to you? So this is why we fight for accessibility. And accessibility. So we know that a lot of our consumers come to us because they feel that they can't achieve what they need to achieve because of inaccessibility to access programs, services, and activities within the recreational space. So I have here an example of a case study of a person who has come to Sydney in the past, a person who is blind, also has a learning disability. And she has difficulties accessing print documents because of her learning disability and sensory disability. We must recognize that we have to improve our level of access. So the first one is dealing with PDF documents. We know that PDF documents, if a person is using a screen reading technology like JAWS for Windows, or other type of screen readers, that PDFs in their standard form is a picture image. And as scanned as a picture image, the person is not going to be able to read it. So we recommend, if you are going to use PDFs, that you set the PDF to PDF-A, which is an accessibility mode that will allow for the screen reader to recognize the image as text and be able to read that information to the user. We also notice that because a lot of our programs, like in Microsoft, have continual updates. When they do these updates, at times for the person who depends on the keyboard, using keyboard shortcuts, sometimes for one version of Microsoft or any other program, it changes as upgrades are made. So it becomes very important for the user to stay current and up to date with all the keyboard shortcuts, because one version would allow them to access your particular website in a certain way. And then a new version of that they would have to learn a new shortcut in order to access that particular website or that particular program in a different way. We know that people have multiple access to technology, meaning that they're going to access different programs. So maybe they're accessing YouTube, maybe they're using a dating app, maybe they're using a database program through Salesforce, or maybe they're using a different government website to find out information about upcoming jobs in the state. All of these programs will allow for a person who uses screen reading technology to use different keystrokes. So it becomes really, really complicated because that user really has to stay on top of their keystrokes. And if we could have universal access where a lot of the programs are using the same keystrokes, it becomes a lot easier for this individual so that they don't have to learn so many keystrokes to then navigate all these various complexities of life that we know that we have to use in order to access information. That's why it's so incredibly important when you are designing your website to make sure that you have the proper headings, that you actually use buttons, and you have things labeled. Make sure pictures are alt text so that the person who's using the screen reading technology can actually access the information. Sometimes we have a lot of surveys and forms that we send out, and we're looking for feedback. It's very important that you use a survey form tool that's actually accessible to screen reading technology so that the person can actually respond to your questionnaires. Sometimes you may get a low response rate, and it's not because the person doesn't really want to respond, but it's because he or she can't, because they're using assistive technology that is that's not allowing them to do that because the layout and design was not done in the correct manner. Downloading documents, very important that when you are have portals that you want people to access your information, especially documents, that you make it accessible for them to do that. Sometimes it's easy for you to just send the documents as an attachment, rather than navigating someone to some type of system where they have to then download the system. If the system is not clearly identified in an accessible button, the person that used the adaptive keyboard or keystrokes will not be able to access it. So keep that in mind. Flyers, I know we always like to advertise our programs and services with flyers, and a lot of the times the flyers are an actual image. They're not accessible for screen reading technology. So when you are doing your flyers again, make sure that you make them accessible by using the alt texting so that they can have access to the actual text. People that are blind do like pictures, so don't assume because they can't see that they're not interested in seeing something beautiful. We are. It's just up to you to make sure that you label it correctly so that we can appreciate what the image is as well. Signing documents, I know because of the world of COVID, post-COVID, we are now doing a lot of electronic signing. You need to make sure that whatever vehicle program that you use, it's accessible for screen reading technology. Have a lot of issues with DocuSign because it's not always relatively accessible. So keep in mind, test out these platforms first to make sure that screen reading technology can easily access it. People that are blind don't always have someone available to do things for them, especially when they are working on the computer. So you have to assume that whatever you send them, they need to be able to do it independently, regardless if someone is present to help them or not. I think I gave you a comprehensive idea of what people face with disabilities. What is Sydney doing to improve digital accessibility? We also work to make sure our website are compliant. We do have the Recite Me tool, and we work really hard to make sure that everything that we put forth on our website is screen reading magnification accessible. And we also know that many people with disabilities, English is not their primary language. And we know that people with disabilities have multiple disabilities. So they may have learning disabilities or traumatic brain injury. So we make sure that they're able to access our information in very simple language so that people can understand our services and be able to contact us for help. We also make sure that accommodations are given to our consumers for those that may need additional support. And we also provide accommodations to our staff members because we live and breathe disability. And of course, the people that work for us have disabilities and we need to accommodate them as well. So the last slide for me is our contact information. If you live in the 5 boroughs of New York City, please contact us, 212-673-2300. And our email address is sydney.org, CIDNY.org. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon. It was great to hear about the human impact of accessibility and the importance of making sure that websites were taking into account inclusive design. So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we will hear from Kyle from Opera Omaha. He will share more about accessibility in the arts from a marketing point of view.
Thank you. Yeah. So when we are, like I said, we are a opera company located in Omaha, Nebraska. We are the only opera company in Nebraska. And so when we think about that and we think about what our art form is, accessibility is always something that we're talking about. The arts don't discriminate. The arts are not exclusive. Everybody has the ability to listen to music or see art or see design or experience the communal feeling of a performance together. And so it's what we kind of look at and what our work is all year round, whether we're in in a theater or not. What we like to say at Opera Omaha is that when we're looking at accessibility, the 3 things we always come back to is that we're building community and making opera more equitable and more relevant. We're fostering human-centered collaboration that's inspiring connections. And then we're creating and delivering responsive quality programs using opera and its elements. which is kind of it's a little bit of a academic way of saying we really want to recognize what are the doors that might be closed to people who would like to access the arts, and what are the maybe even perceived doors that might keep someone from accessing the arts, and what are the doors that we don't even know are there, and how can we open these doors, and how can we make sure our community and our city knows that these doors are open and available to them. So obviously when I say opera, yes, we create operas, people singing on stage, grand performances. But the nice thing about opera is that it is really an art form that combines multiple art forms. It is singing, it is instruments, it is dance, it is visual, it's design, and it kind of almost encapsulates all performing and fine arts and kind of puts them in one place. And so one of the ways that we kind of go into our community and we make it more accessible is through what we call our Holland Community Opera Fellowship. This is a group of teaching artists that take kind of that toolbox, if you will, of the different forms of opera. And we say, okay, well, how do we bring this to communities that might not have access, or people might not think have access to this art form? So what we do is we actually collaborate with more than a dozen local community partners and organizations and nonprofit across our metro area. And what we do is, instead of coming to them and saying, here's what we got, let us come into your organization and we've got all the answers, we go to them first and we say, you are the experts. We're an opera company. We are not the experts in food insecurity or the juvenile justice system or home insecurity. Like that's not our world, but they are the experts in those places. So we come to them and say, what are your goals? What do your constituents and the people that are in your organization, being served by your organization, what do they need? And what access to arts can be beneficial to them? And then we partner with them to create custom programs for those organizations based on who they serve. So these can be around creativity, they can be around music, they can kind of, again, look at all the art forms of opera. So we often work with people with neurological disabilities, various ranges of accessibility or disability issues, all ages, multiple languages. We work with refugees. And so when we're looking at our programs, aren't just people sitting in a theater, but the entire community. What our digital accessibility is becomes really important, because again, as we're trying to open as many doors as possible, that means all the information that we put out is not just for one type of person who might go to a symphony or might go to an opera, but it's for our entire community. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So what does this look like in terms of programming? On stage, we have things like free student dress rehearsals. We invite schools in to view operas for free for student dress, and that's students from elementary age all the way up to colleges, so that they have access to the arts, and money isn't a barrier to buying a ticket to experience something. We do backstage tours with different community groups and different classes prior to the opera, so they can kind of see the entire world. We do what are called community circle comp tickets, which are complimentary tickets for some of the partners we work with. For instance, we work with groups with adults with disabilities who now have access to free opera tickets. Alternatives for Violence is a group that has access to reintegrate into the community, and we're happy to be a part of that. And again, those are how can we open as many doors as possible for people that might not even feel like they're invited into a space like a theater, but make it a welcoming and open place for them. We do relaxed performances, as well as making our spaces sensory friendly accommodations and making those available to people who would want to take advantage of that. And from a digital standpoint, that also puts out social narratives, making sure that getting kind of the preparation for coming to the opera comes in multiple formats based on whatever accommodations people might need. We offer super titles for every opera, even if they're in English. So when you attend an opera, often it's not in English, just because that's the art form, but we translate every single line as it's happening. Same as if you were watching a foreign film and you saw the subtitles at the bottom of the screen, we put those above the stage so you can follow along and understand what's happening, whether you're speaking the language that's being sung or not. And then we translate our program book content as well into both English and Spanish, which is our second most the most spoken language here in our metro area, so that's not a barrier, but it's also a welcoming sense when you come into the theater. Offstage, we are visiting and putting our artists out into the community as well. They will come to different groups, come to different classrooms, come to different organizations outside of performance. We do Opera and Conversation series where we invite other experts in our community to come and comment on how this opera connects to other areas of our city. The Poetry and Music Project connects students with composers so that a student can write poetry and have a professional composer set those words to music. We also do community art shows inspired by each opera, so we're connecting to the entire artistic community, not just the opera community. And then we do free concerts and recitals around the entire city as well. And again, so these are, when people think opera, they think I'm going to go and I'm going to sit in the dark theater and I'm going to listen to someone, you know, sing in Italian. And yes, that can be a part of it, but there's so much more to the art form. And so how can we take that one experience and put it outside of the theater as well? And you can go to the next slide. And so the biggest way we probably do this is how do we get our information and how do we make that a safe place and a comfortable place to go? If you've ever tried something new for the first time, it can be terrifying. And you know that your experience doesn't start once you're sitting in a seat of a theater. Your experience starts way beforehand when you think, okay, how do I prepare for this? Do I need to, where do I park? What should I be wearing? What time do I need to show up? Like, how do I get to the location? And that's where our digital presence really comes in. So we create content that walks people through what is this experience going to be like? And that includes written, but also social narratives on our website to kind of guide you and prepare you for what might be a new and a little bit scary experience if you've never tried it before. We also put a lot of pre-show content out. So the synopsis, you can read a full synopsis so you know exactly what's going to happen, what the story is. We do study guides that are compliant with our educational standards in the state and in the city. The directors write pieces about what they are interpreting from this piece. The conductor might write a piece and about what musically you're going to hear. How does this impact historically? And all that, again, when it's on a digital place, has to be accessible, especially as we are serving a whole range of, you know, ages, people coming in from different languages and from different backgrounds. And how can we make that information then as easy for them to access and understand as possible? We also release what we call our Know Before You Go, which walks you through the whole system. Where do I get my tickets? Where should I park? How do I get to the theater? If I need accommodations, who should I go talk to? Are there different doors I need to go in? Are there events I can go to prepare for this? If I want a snack, where are the snacks? You know, every detail, how many intermissions will there be? Every kind of detail is laid out. And again, that's why it's so important for us to give this information from a digital standpoint that's accessible. When we're trying to open as many doors as possible, we don't always know who's going to walk through those doors until they're there. So we really try to be preemptive in how we can prepare folks to join us at the opera. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. And that's a little bit, if you have questions, please visit operaomaha.org, or if you're ever in Omaha, Nebraska and you want to see an opera, look us up.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing that about Opera Omaha and the importance of accessibility in the arts. Next, we're going to hear from our accessibility specialist, Avneet, who's going to go through a few pieces on ADA compliance, the DOJ mandate, and some WCAG stuff for you guys.
Thank you. So firstly, I'd like to start by talking about what is WCAG. So WCAG stands for the American Disability Act. It's a new accessibility law that is upcoming, and we can see some recent changes that have been brought into place by DOJ. Obviously, previously this was more of a guidance, but it's going to be more of a mandate now coming in the next year. So what would this ensure? Basically, it's going to ensure we're providing equal digital access for all of the individuals, so that we're accommodating and delivering services that are accessible for all. So what this is going to apply to mainly, it will be to your public entities, such as your websites, your mobile apps, everything and anything that you're delivering should be accessible. You also need to make sure that it aligns with the current accessibility standards, which, as Kelly mentioned, it's your Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is 2.1 level AA. And obviously, when you follow a thorough process, you're going to be removing all of the digital barriers that somebody might be facing. Once you've removed all of the digital barriers, this in a nutshell is going to promote inclusivity for the end user, and you're going to accommodate to a wide range of users and making sure that anything that they want to have access to, whether it's your documents, whether it's your web services, all should be accessible. And lastly, it's going to be a legal requirement for all state and local governments. Next slide for me, please. So when does the DOJ go into effect? So this would be April next year. Obviously, we don't have long, but if we start taking small actions from now or from today, we can sort of slowly make sure that we're in time to meet the deadline. Next slide for me, please. So who does the ADA apply to? Obviously, it applies to all your federal, state, and local government agencies. It also applies to your nonprofit organizations, as well as applying to private businesses and employment entities. So everybody that falls under that category should sort of start thinking like ahead. So they should start planning out certain accessibility roadmaps, start seeing what small steps they can take, like starting from now, so to ensure that they meet the regulation on time. Next slide for me, please. So why does this obviously matter to your organization? Firstly, compliance is going to become mandatory. So if you fall under the ADA or Section 508, you're obviously going to you will have a legal obligation to make sure that you're meeting the accessibility standards. Failing to do so could lead to lawsuits, penalties, and obviously at the end of the day, we want to cater to many users as possible. So I would say if you're meeting all the WCAG requirements, you're making somebody's life a lot easier for somebody to use your services in the most accessible way. Secondly, accessibility is about inclusion. Like I said before, you want to avoid any risks. You want to make sure that any tools, any content, any services that you're providing, it's for everyone and not just for some. So you should cater to everybody's needs. And lastly, big changes are coming up in 2026. Obviously, these changes are just around the corner, but we can help you on that journey as ReciteMe. We can guide you what should be your starting point, and we can also help you with the right tools that you could be using. Next slide for me, please. And what are the key steps you need to become ADA compliant? Obviously, one main one is that you need to enhance your user experience. So you can use the ReciteMe toolbar as a good starting point, which would create inclusivity for your end users. You could use our checker, which would show you a clear picture of what the current compliancy level of your website is. Obviously, it'll provide a scoring level, and then we can help you enhance that score as well by providing help and guidance over calls. Secondly, you need to make sure that you are abiding by WCAG, so you're fixing and remediating all of the issues that you're finding on your site. Obviously, accessibility can be overwhelming to start off with. You might find a lot of issues, but we can help you categorize them issues and prioritize them issues as well, and also help you with building next, which would be the accessibility roadmap, like I said before, to showcase what your commitment for this new upcoming act would be for the coming year. And we can also help you setting up a remediation plan so that you take it in small parts rather than trying to fix everything at once. Next slide for me, please. So what is WCAG? And these are obviously the technical standards that you should be meeting for ADA. WCAG stands for your Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are international regulations that are provided by W3C. And also WCAG is then further divided into 3 compliancy levels. So you've got your level A, your AA, and your AAA. And in order to be ADA compliant, like I said before, you need to be meeting AA compliancy. So obviously level A is your basic standard. It consists of your 30 success criteria. Once you meet them 30 success criteria, these are your priority. Once you fix those, you can move on to the next level, which is your required level of compliancy, which is obviously, or you can call it as your industry required level. And that obviously includes your 50 success criteria. And lastly, if you want to further enhance user experience, you can meet AAA, which is obviously the optimal standard required for accessibility. And that entails 78 of the success criteria of WCAG. Next slide for me, please. So what 3 easy, quick WCAG fixes that you could do now is obviously make sure that you have the correct alt text on your images. As Dr. Sharon said to us previously, having alt text is crucial for users because it helps deliver the context of the image. It helps the user understand what that image is trying to convey, what the image is trying to convey to the end user. Secondly, color contrast is a massive help for users that have certain types of visual impairments. You need to make sure that the contrast between the foreground and the background is set correctly. Again, that really helps and makes the user experience a lot easier. And lastly, a quick check that you could do is page structure. So by that, I mean, make sure that your pages have the correct title. It's got the correct heading structure. Heading structure is crucial because it allows somebody, if they're trying to access your document, they can navigate better. Somebody that's a screen reader user, again, they would have a better and a more easier user experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Avneet, for sharing that about the ADA and the DOJ mandate. Next, we're going to hear from Emma from Daymark Recovery Services.
Thank you. So I am the program director for the patient experience department within Daymark Recovery Services. We're a not-for-profit behavioral healthcare provider. So that's mental health and substance use disorders that we help people with. We have 49 locations here in North Carolina. We're one of the larger behavioral healthcare providers in the state. And so substance use and behavioral health services, we've provided those to around 60,000 people each year. We've been open for 21 years as of January of this year, so we're very well established. We've grown significantly. We started out with 4 locations, now up to that 49, and actually we're adding another location this month. So we continue to grow. You know, there's a huge need for these services within our communities as well as communities across the country. So this is sort of a breakdown of our different facilities. We have outpatient centers, facility-based crisis, behavioral health urgent care centers, psychosocial rehabs, individual placement support center. One of our centers is a residential facility, and newly this year we have an inpatient hospital. So this is who we're serving. During our last fiscal year, we served 48,000 adults, 8,500 children, 3,500 older adults. Many of these individuals did need translation services. We have a lot of our population does not speak English as their first language, and so that was a huge need for us. In 24, 7,000 pieces of content on our website were translated. So that's hugely exciting for us. It's really important that people have access to the information they need when they come to visit our website. These are the actual types of service. We talked about the types of facilities. These are types of services. So outpatient, inpatient treatments, substance use, crisis services, intensive in-home, residential, and then some community-based services. So all of the services other than community-based services are provided in facilities. Community-based services are provided within schools, even in homes and other community settings. So we're quite mobile. We're out and about within our community to serve where we're needed. And we started to work with Recite Me because we recognized that we needed to ensure that digital resources are accessible to everybody that visits our website. And so we've been really pleased that we're now able to offer a great accessibility toolbar on our website. Tailored care management is a new, relatively new, it's 2 years old, service within North Carolina, and it focuses on whole person care. So really, recognizing the fact that your mental health and your physical health are working together. Without one, the other is not going to be strong. And so for that whole person care, we're addressing mental health, substance use, physical needs, and social needs, which are hugely important. If somebody is facing homelessness, it's very hard for them to focus on their mental health or on their substance use disorder. So it's important that we're helping folks in all of these areas. We're bridging gaps in healthcare access, so overcoming the barriers that people may have to access their care. Language, of course, is one. But also literacy, financial, and transportation barriers. So we provide transportation through this tailored care management service to make sure that people are able to get to their appointments, whether it's with Daymark or at their physical health doctor. And then we support a high need population. So we focus on Medicaid beneficiaries and those with severe mental illness, as well as substance use disorders, or IDD, which is developmental disabilities. So this is the exciting part. We've just observed a huge utilization of this tool, and which really speaks to its importance so that people can access the information across our website. And admittedly, we have some work to do on our website. So the fact that we have this tool really is very helpful. This last statement that's in bold is really sort of the impetus for us seeking help, because with Recite Me or through Recite Me, because it's hugely important to us that when someone does take that courageous first step to seek help for their behavioral health needs, whether it's a mental health or a substance use disorder, that they have immediate and seamless access to the correct information on our website. Just you've heard it, I'm sure, many times, that it's very difficult to take that first step. Well, when somebody does take that first step, we certainly want them to be able to take the next step and continue in their behavioral health journey. So it's really been essential to guiding them towards the support they need. This rocket symbol symbolizes the number of times the Recite Me toolbar has been launched. And then the other number, the 6,459, is the number of pages that have been accessed on our website. So, I think about this in terms of the number of times it's been launched. Potentially that's a huge number of people that have been able to gain the access to the information that they needed in order to seek the help that they needed. And so it makes us pretty excited here at Daymark, and we're thrilled for the help from the Recite Me team.
So thank you so much, Emma, for sharing more about Daymark and the people and communities that you serve.
Thank you.
We're gonna hear from Kelly. We've heard about the importance of accessibility and the why. Kelly's just gonna run through some practical steps to enhance digital accessibility.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Raisa. So in this presentation, we have talked about looking at accessibility very holistically, and from the first moment that someone arrives onto your website all the way through to making sure that from a coding perspective that your site is compliant. And we talked about our toolbar, checker, and then an ongoing remediation program. We would recommend that the first thing that we would help you to do is look at an accessibility statement, and also to have an accessibility scan of your site. And so in the next slide, we'll actually see a QR code that will allow you to do that, but it will help to identify what issues exist on your website, see where you are as far as a current benchmark, what issues you may have, how you can work to resolve those. And then you can start to prioritize those fixes. That will help you to achieve those goals, and then putting together a sustainable ongoing remediation plan, because accessibility and compliance is not a one-time fix. It's something that's an ongoing need into the future as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you to all of our speakers. We have a couple questions that came in that I'm going to pose to help answer. So first question is, how does the Recite Me accessibility checker compare to Google Lighthouse and SkillTide, which are free accessibility verification systems? And Kelly or Avneet, feel free to jump in here.
Thank you for your question. So I think compared to the obviously the Lighthouse and SkillTide, our checker goes one step ahead. So we provide recommendations within the checker. So obviously, if you've got a certain issue, for example, on your website, for example, let's say your non-text content, which is your images are missing alt text. What the SkillTide and obviously Lighthouse would do, just provide you more of an automated response, give you a score saying this is the issue, whereas our checker would tell you exactly where the element is or where the issue is. It will give you a potential impact on the user as well, explain what's the importance of fixing this issue for the end user, also provide you with a recommendation of where exactly you need to make the code change, and obviously give you all of the instances where that issue has been flagged, as opposed to just at one particular instance. The other key functionality of our checker is you can scan custom journeys. For example, obviously, if you're doing a full accessibility audit, it's obviously you're just going to be doing a sample audit, so it gets tricky for you to scan each and every single page. But whereas with the checker, you can input certain golden journeys. We've got that ability. We also provide an extensive report with the checker, again highlighting what are the top WCAG fixes that you've done, what is the current scoring rating, comparatively to SkillTide and Lighthouse, which they just provide a brief overview of the accessibility issues. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Avneet. Another question, actually, I think for you as well. So this is the first time that some participants have heard private business need to meet the ADA mandate. Can you explain that a little bit further for them?
Yep, thank you for your question. So basically, obviously, we know that certain private businesses, especially if they are considered places of public accommodation, they obviously fall under the Title III of ADA. So these might be businesses such as obviously your restaurants, your hotels, your theatres. All of these, as per Title III of ADA, should be obviously meeting with WCAG laws, and you need to be ADA compliant if you are falling within them sectors. But if you wanted an extensive list, I'm sure we can share that when we share the webinar recording, if that's something that would be helpful for yourselves.
The other thing that I can jump in there too to add is that any entities that have more than 15 employees, 15 employees, also need to meet the certain EOE guidelines, meaning that your hiring processes, the ability for individuals who may have a disability, visual decline, or may not speak English as their first language, have the ability to navigate through the hiring process, to be able to read and search for your career postings, and also be able to fill out forms and or successfully navigate through the entire application process in an equitable way as well.
This is Dr. Weah from Sydney. I just wanted to jump in also and say that the mandates of Title III has always been in the legislation of the Americans with Disabilities Act as of 1990 and its corresponding amendments in 2008. So there are businesses who are a little bit behind in trying to get the accessibility in place. But these standards and requirements have been in place for many years. You should know that many disabled people live in your communities, and they are going to centers of independent living. There's 408 centers across the country, because they're looking to seek advocacy help to address businesses that are not complying with ADA. So this is not a new purview. This is not a new provision. What's happening now is that people with disability are becoming more aware of their rights and their need to access all types of activities within the community. So it behooves you to work on your issues if you have any regarding accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weir. That actually goes into another question that was posed. Is there any indication that the current administration and their priorities will affect the 2026 timeline from the DOJ? like, would it get pushed further back? And any of the speakers can answer this question.
I would say that, we have obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd love to be able to say that I can see into the future. And I can tell you exactly what the current administration, what effects that will have on the timelines. I don't. The only thing I can say is we know what the timelines are as of now. And so if you are sort of gambling or thinking, well, maybe it's going to be pushed out, you certainly don't want to be behind in that and waiting until the last minute. Things like this do take some time to put into place, and having something like an accessibility statement, putting together an accessibility plan, and then starting to carry out that plan is going to take some time. We know now that for those who are serving communities of 50,000 or more, that deadline is April of 2026, but that's only for the DOJ mandate. As Dr. Weir mentioned, Title III of the ADA, Section 508, as well as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, all of those have been in place for many years. And those are things that affect you right now and really don't have anything to do with that DOJ mandate or the April 2026 deadline.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And we're actually at the top of the hour. So if anyone has any further questions, I'll be sending an email out to all the attendees and anyone who dropped off the call early, so I can help you answer them or send the questions to any of the speakers today to help you get an answer. But thank you so much to all the speakers today for sharing about their organization's mission, the importance of accessibility. It was great to hear from such diverse groups of clients. So thank you so much, and be on the lookout for my email.
Thank you, Raisa.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.